There are moments in life that divide everything into two parts. The life you thought you were living, and the life you finally realize you've been living all along. For me, that moment lasted less than 10 seconds. My wife didn't scream. She didn't accuse me of anything. She didn't even sound angry. She looked up from her phone, took a sip of her coffee, and calmly said, "I think I settled for you. My friends keep telling me I deserve someone more successful." I remember staring at her, waiting for the punchline. It never came. She wasn't joking. She genuinely believed those words. For a second, my heart wanted to fight back. I wanted to remind her of every sacrifice I'd made, every late night, every promise I'd kept, every dream we'd built together. But then something inside me became strangely quiet. I smiled, not because I was happy, because I suddenly understood that no explanation could change the mind of someone who had already decided your value. So I simply looked at her and said, "If that's how you feel, then you should go." She blinked. I don't think she expected that answer. She expected an argument. She expected tears. She expected me to beg her to stay. Instead, I walked upstairs, closed the bedroom door, and sat in complete silence. That was the moment my marriage ended. Not because she wanted someone else, but because I realized she had stopped seeing me long before that conversation. My name is Ethan Brooks. I'm 44 years old. Most people would describe me as painfully ordinary. I don't wear expensive watches. I drive a 7-year-old pickup truck. Half the clothes in my closet are faded from years of use. If you saw me buying groceries, you'd probably mistake me for an average office worker trying to get through another Tuesday. Honestly, I preferred it that way. Because growing up, my father taught me something I've never forgotten. He used to say, "Real wealth whispers, only insecurity feels the need to shout." At the time, I didn't understand what he meant. Years later, I finally did. I grew up in a small town where nobody cared about designer brands. People judged you by whether you kept your word. If you promised to help your neighbor repair a fence, you showed up. If someone needed money, you lent it without expecting applause. Respect wasn't bought. It was earned. My parents weren't rich. Far from it. My father owned a small repair shop. My mother worked at the local library. Some months were harder than others, but somehow they always made enough. Not because life was easy, because they refused to quit. Watching them taught me that success wasn't about looking important. It was about becoming dependable. That lesson shaped every decision I made. While other kids chased popularity, I chased stability. I studied, worked nights, graduated with an engineering degree, spent nearly 20 years building software systems for manufacturing companies. It wasn't glamorous. Nobody on social media celebrated people who optimized warehouse logistics. But it paid well, very well. I invested almost everything I earned. Stocks, commercial property, small private businesses that nobody else believed in. Most people never noticed. Exactly the way I wanted it. I met my wife, Olivia, 6 years ago. She had a smile that could light up an entire restaurant. She was funny, confident, curious, the kind of woman who could talk to strangers for 5 minutes and somehow leave with 3 new friends. She made life feel exciting. Our first year together was incredible. Weekend road trips, late-night pizza, laughing until 2 in the morning over absolutely nothing. When I proposed beside a quiet lake one autumn evening, she cried before I even opened the ring box. For a long time, I believed I'd found my forever. Looking back now, I think I fell in love with who she was before the world started telling her who she should become. The changes were so small that I almost missed them. At first it was harmless. She became interested in luxury fashion, then expensive restaurants, then social media influencers who documented every vacation, every handbag, every perfectly staged dinner. Again, none of that bothered me. People are allowed to enjoy nice things. But slowly, those videos stopped being entertainment. They became comparisons. Almost every conversation started with the same words. Did you see what Jessica's husband bought her? Can you believe they flew first class? Mark just surprised his wife with a new Mercedes. Each comment sounded casual, but together, they became impossible to ignore. I noticed she spent more time with a group of friends who measured success almost entirely by appearances. If someone's house wasn't impressive, they whispered about it. If someone's vacation wasn't expensive, they laughed. If someone's husband wore the same jacket twice, apparently that was embarrassing. The strange part, none of those people actually knew anything about Moan. Why? They only knew how wealth looked, not how it was built. I wanted to tell Olivia that appearances rarely tell the full story. But every time I tried, she smiled politely and changed the subject. One Friday evening, we attended a dinner party at her friend Jessica's house. The conversation quickly turned into a competition. Luxury cars, vacation homes, designer watches, investment portfolio that sounded suspiciously exaggerated. Someone eventually looked at me and asked, "So Ethan, what do you actually do?" "I design industrial software." Silence. One man laughed. "Oh, so basically it." I smiled. Something like that. Olivia didn't defend me. She didn't correct him. She simply looked away. It lasted only a few seconds. But somehow those few seconds hurt more than the joke itself. Driving home that night, neither of us spoke. Outside, rain tapped softly against the windshield. Inside the truck, the silence said everything. I had a feeling something bigger was coming. I just didn't know it would arrive sooner than I imagined. Because only 4 days later, Olivia would say a single sentence. One sentence that would destroy everything we had built together. And after that, there would be no way back. 4 days after that dinner party, I came home just after 7 in the evening. The house was unusually quiet. Olivia was sitting at the kitchen island with a glass of white wine, scrolling through her phone. She barely looked up when I walked in. "Long day?" I asked. "MMHMM," she replied without lifting her eyes. I poured myself a glass of water and loosened my tie. Something felt different. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, like the room already knew what was about to happen. Then she placed her phone on the counter. "My friends were talking today." I nodded. "They think," she paused, "and that I settled." I waited. "They think I could have married someone much more successful." The words landed with terrifying calmness. Not because they were loud. Because they weren't. She spoke as if she were discussing tomorrow's weather. No guilt. No hesitation. Just certainty. I stared at the woman I'd promised forever. The woman I'd imagined growing old with. And suddenly, I realized she wasn't looking at me anymore. She was looking through me, seeing only what I didn't display, not who I actually was. For a moment, I considered telling her everything. The investment company I'd quietly become a partner in. The commercial buildings I'd purchased over the last 8 years. The startup that had just signed a contract worth millions. The financial freedom I'd spent nearly 2 decades building. I could have opened my laptop, shown her every account, every contract, every investment, every dollar. Instead, I simply smiled. If you truly believe that. I picked up my glass. Then you should find the man you think you deserve. She looked surprised. Only for a second. Then she shrugged. I just think I want more. Those 6 words ended something inside me. Not my love. My hope. I quietly finished my water and walked upstairs. Behind me. She never called my name. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. For the first time in months. My mind felt strangely clear. Not angry. Not heartbroken. Just certain. I opened my notebook. 1 page. 5 names. The first was my travel advisor. "Good morning, Ethan," he answered cheerfully. "I need to cancel everything. The anniversary trip. Everything." He paused. "Are you sure?" "Yes." Within 15 minutes. The beachfront villa overlooking the Pacific. Cancelled. Private sailing excursion. Cancelled. Chef's dinner reservation. Cancelled. The luxury spa package she'd always wanted. Gone. Every surprise I'd spent months planning. Disappeared with a few quiet phone calls. The second call went to a jeweler. For nearly 3 months, she'd been designing a custom diamond necklace for our upcoming anniversary. Olivia had once admired a similar piece through a jewelry store window. She thought I'd forgotten. I never had. "I need to cancel the order," I told the jeweler. "I'm sorry to hear that," she replied softly. "So am I." That was all either of us said. Over the next week, life inside our house became strangely normal. Olivia continued going out with her friends, posting photos, smiling for the camera, laughing louder than ever. It almost looked like she was happier. Maybe she thought I'd eventually apologize. Maybe she expected me to fight for her. Instead, I focused on work. One afternoon, I drove 2 hours to meet with the founders of a renewable energy company I'd invested in 4 years earlier. Most people thought I was attending another boring engineering conference. In reality, we were finalizing the biggest deal of my career. When the last signature hit the contract, the lead investor stood up and shook my hand. "Congratulations, Ethan. You've officially become one of the company's largest shareholders." Everyone lauded. Someone popped open champagne. I quietly accepted a glass. But inside, I wasn't celebrating money. I was celebrating peace. Because for the first time, I understood something my father had tried to teach me years ago. Real success isn't proving people wrong. It's reaching the point where you no longer care whether they believe you. That evening I returned home. Olivia was getting ready to go out. New dress. New perfume. Phone buzzing every few seconds. "Jessica's organizing dinner tomorrow," she said while adjusting an earring. "The whole group's going. Sounds fun." She looked at me for a moment, almost as if she expected me to ask if I could come. I didn't. Instead, I wished her a good evening and walked into my home office. A few minutes later, I heard the front door close. Then silence. I opened my laptop. An email had just arrived from my attorney. Everything we discussed earlier that week was ready. If I wanted to move forward, The paperwork was complete. I stared at the screen for nearly 5 minutes. Then, without saying a single word, I clicked approve. I didn't know it yet, but while Olivia and her friends were celebrating what they believed was the beginning of her better life, the biggest mistake of her life had already become permanent. And less than 48 hours later, one unexpected phone call would change everything. The phone rang at exactly 3:42 in the morning. I was awake before the second ring. Years of early meetings had trained my body to wake at the slightest sound. The caller ID surprised me. Jessica, Olivia's closest friend. The same woman who had spent months convincing her that she deserved someone more successful. For a moment, I considered letting it ring. Instead, I answered, "Hello." There was silence. Then I heard someone crying. "Ethan." Jessica's voice was shaking. I don't know who else to call." I sat up in bed. "What happened?" Another pause. Then she whispered, "It's Olivia." My stomach tightened. "Is she okay?" "She's physically fine." "Then what's wrong?" Jessica took a deep breath. "Everything went horribly tonight." Olivia's birthday dinner had been planned for months. Jessica had rented one of the most exclusive rooftop restaurants in the city. Private dining room, live pianist, professional photographer. Every detail was designed to impress social media. According to Jessica, the evening started perfectly. Champagne flowed. Everyone laughed. Photos were taken every few minutes. Every guest was dressed as if they were attending an awards ceremony. Then, about an hour into dinner, a man arrived. His name was Adrian Cole, a wealthy real estate developer. At least, that's how he introduced himself. Jessica immediately guided him toward Olivia. "Ethan isn't the future," she whispered. "You should meet someone who actually lives the lifestyle you deserve." Olivia smiled. She didn't object. Within minutes, she and Adrian were talking as if they'd known each other for years. Jessica admitted something that shocked me. We all thought this would be the night Olivia finally realized she could do better. Those words didn't hurt anymore. They simply confirmed I'd made the right decision. Jessica continued. After dinner, Adrian invited everyone to a private lounge. The group followed. Luxury cars, VIP entrance, private booths. Everything looked exactly like the glamorous life Olivia had always admired. For nearly 2 hours, she barely stopped smiling. She laughed at Adrian's jokes, accepted expensive drinks, even exchanged phone numbers. Jessica admitted she had never seen Olivia look happier. Then, everything changed. A man wearing a dark suit walked into the lounge. He walked directly toward Adrian. Without saying hello, he placed a folder on the table. The room went silent. Adrian's smile disappeared. Jessica could only hear part of the conversation. But one sentence echoed across the room. "Your accounts have officially been frozen." Then another. "The fraud investigation begins Monday morning." Within seconds, Adrian stood up and walked away without looking back. His phone kept ringing. He ignored every call. The confident millionaire everyone admired had disappeared in less than 5 minutes. Jessica's voice cracked. People started searching his name online. News articles appeared almost immediately. Business investigations, unpaid loans, pending lawsuits. Everything. The man everyone believed was successful had been living almost entirely on borrowed money. The expensive watches, luxury cars, private memberships, none of it actually belonged to him anymore. The entire room fell silent. No one knew what to say. Then, someone looked at Olivia. Very quietly, one woman asked, "What about Ethan?" Jessica paused. "You know what happened next." "What?" "Someone searched your name." I frowned. "My name?" "Yes. Apparently, one of the guests recognized me. He remembered seeing me interview D several months earlier after a manufacturing technology company announced a record-breaking acquisition. Within minutes, everyone at the table was reading article after article. Not gossip websites, business magazines, investment reports, corporate interviews. The room slowly filled with uncomfortable silence. Jessica whispered, "Ethan, they discovered who you really are." She told me. Olivia grabbed Jessica's phone. She read every article herself, every interview, every business profile, every investment announcement, every success she'd never bothered asking about. Then, she looked completely frozen. One of the women finally broke the silence. "Wait, you're telling me her husband owns part of that company?" Another replied, "And 3 commercial buildings downtown." Someone else added, "He was listed among the city's fastest-growing private investors." Jessica sighed. "We had no idea." No, they hadn't, because none of them had ever cared enough to ask. They judged everything by appearances. "What did Olivia do?" I finally asked. Jessica took a long breath. "She left, without saying goodbye." "No." She started crying. Real crying. Not because of the money. Jessica paused. I think, for the first time, she realized what she'd actually thrown away. I walked toward my bedroom window. The city was completely quiet. Streetlights reflected across the empty roads. After nearly a minute, I spoke. "I hope she finds happiness." Jessica sounded surprised. "That's all you're going to say? What else is there to say?" She didn't answer. Neither did I. We ended the call a few seconds later. As I placed my phone on the nightstand, another notification appeared. It was from my attorney. The divorce papers had been officially scheduled. There was now only one signature left. Mine. And the next morning, Olivia would knock on my office door, begging for one final conversation. She believed there was still time to fix everything. She couldn't have been more wrong. The next morning, at exactly 9:15, there was a knock on my office door. Not loud, not confident, just 3 soft knocks. When I opened it, Olivia was standing there. She looked nothing like the woman who had walked out for her birthday 2 nights earlier. Her eyes were swollen. Her makeup was gone. For the first time in months, she looked real. "I need to talk to you," she whispered. I stepped aside. She walked in slowly, looking around the room as if she'd never seen it before. In many ways, she hadn't. This room had always been my sanctuary, the place where I'd spent countless nights working, while she believed I was simply busy. She noticed framed patents on the wall, business awards she'd never asked about, photos with company founders, books she'd never opened. She stared at them for a long moment. "I never knew." "No," I replied calmly. "You never asked." The room fell silent. Finally, she looked at me. I'm sorry. I nodded. I know. Tears rolled down her face. I made a terrible mistake. I listened to people who didn't care about us. I judged you by things that never mattered. I was wrong. Every sentence sounded sincere. Months ago, those words would have meant everything to me. Now, they felt like echoes from a life that no longer existed. She reached for my hand. I don't care about the money. I swear. I just want us back. I looked at her quietly. Then I asked one simple question. If none of those articles had appeared, if nobody had discovered who I really was, would you still be standing here today? She froze. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Not because she didn't want to answer, because she couldn't. The silence answered for her. I walked to my desk, opened the top drawer, and pulled out a single envelope. She recognized it immediately. The divorce papers. Her hands began to shake. Ethan, please, don't do this. I looked at her with the same calm expression I'd worn the night she told me I wasn't enough. Olivia, the moment you said your friends thought you deserved someone better. Our marriage didn't end. It ended long before that. It ended the day you started believing strangers understood my worth better than you did. She started crying harder. I can change. I know you can. But that's no longer my responsibility. I picked up a pen, signed my name, folded the papers, and placed them back inside the envelope. I truly hope you find the life you're looking for. But it won't be with me. For several seconds, neither of us moved. Then, she quietly walked toward the door. Before leaving, she turned around one last time. I'm going to regret this for the rest of my life. I gave her a small smile. I know. The door closed. And just like that, the chapter I'd held onto for 6 years was over. The divorce was finalized a few months later. There were no dramatic courtroom arguments, no public fights, no revenge, just signatures, paperwork, and two people walking in different directions. Friends kept asking if I hated her. I didn't. Hate is heavy, and I had carried enough weight already. Instead, I chose peace. I focused on my company. Our investment group continued to grow. Within 2 years, we had funded several businesses that created hundreds of jobs. Ironically, the success everyone suddenly admired wasn't what made me happiest. What made me happiest was waking up every morning knowing I no longer had to prove my worth to anyone. About a year later, I bumped into Jessica at a small coffee shop. She looked different, calmer. She smiled as she sat across from me. You know, she said, our whole friend group fell apart after everything that happened. Really? She nodded. We spent years chasing appearances. Perfect vacations. Perfect marriages. Perfect social media. But none of it was real. She stirred her coffee before looking back at me. I finally understand why you always seemed so peaceful. I laughed softly. I wasn't peaceful. I was simply building a life that didn't need anyone's approval. She smiled. I wish more people understood that. So do I. Sometimes people ask if I ever regretted letting Olivia walk away. The honest answer, no, because love without respect eventually becomes loneliness, and wealth without character eventually becomes emptiness. The greatest lesson my father ever taught me wasn't how to make money. It was how to recognize people who valued the person, not the lifestyle. Today, I still drive my old pickup truck. I still wear simple clothes. I still believe that the strongest people rarely feel the need to impress anyone. Because real success isn't measured by the watch on your wrist or the car in your driveway. It's measured by the people who stand beside you, even when they have no idea what your bank account looks like. If someone only sees your value after discovering your success, they never truly saw you in the first place. And that's the kind of person you should never chase. Sometimes, the greatest victory isn't proving people wrong. It's having enough self-respect to quietly let them leave.